Tonight's the night. Hey, great to have you here. So today I'll be discussing episode 2 of Dexter Resurrection titled Camera Shy, which is in reference to this infrared technology that this new killer called the Dark Passenger uses in this episode. As a reminder, I'll be covering each episode of the show after it airs, going through the episode details, giving my thoughts as we go, and then giving a final episode rating of it, either being a negative, neutral, or positive. Also, real quick, I'm hoping we can reach 1,000 subscribers this year, so if you enjoy talking Dexter or other pop culture topics, please consider subbing to the channel for more future content. Now, jumping into episode 2, we open with this mysterious guy who gets in an Uber or an alternate ride-sharing company they later call Your Car, and then kidnaps the driver, threatening him with some kind of razor wire around his neck. From the backseat, the kidnapper looks at the ID of the guy driving, so it seems like he could be the guy who's collecting IDs that Uma Thurman visited the apartment of in the last episode, and this guy is acting very much like Dexter, and even looks like him. And for the intro of the episode, they do these quick flash cuts of what's to come in the episode, similar to what they did in New Blood if you watch that. I don't love this style choice, but it was fine. We then see the outcome of the rideshare driver, finding out that he got his head cut off, and so far this season is a lot more violent and graphic than past seasons of Dexter. It definitely seems like they're a lot more willing to show us on screen what's actually happening here. We then cut to Dexter, who's snooping on Harrison, and similar to the violence, at this point I did once again notice they're using a lot more music this season, seemingly more than they've done in the past. So Dexter winds up going to the hotel that Harrison works at and where he did the kill at, and he winds up going to the stairwell, going up to try to find the crime scene on floor 11. You can kind of tell here that Dexter's still trying to recover from his injuries, so he's not his full self yet, but he somehow manages to get up to floor 11. He winds up heading into the hotel room of the guy that Harrison killed and touches everything with no gloves, surprisingly. Which I don't really get because Dexter's still been giving the impression that it's important to be careful, and we literally saw him buy gloves in the last episode. When examining the scene, he realizes that Harrison used the shower lining to wrap up the body, which he has such a proud dad moment there. And then suddenly, the detectives show up and Dexter heads into the closet. Realistically, I think he probably would have gotten caught here, but that's fine. Instead, he's conveniently there to hear everything the detectives are talking about and that they know, such as oxygen bleach being used to clean this room, and thinking that no other room would actually be that clean. We then get a brief scene of Harrison coming to babysit one of his coworkers' kids that we met in the last episode, and then back with Dexter, he's exploring the hotel a little bit more, trying to figure out where Harrison may have done the kill. He then realizes that the kitchen probably would make the most sense, so he goes down to the restaurant and orders 2 burgers, which I think is probably a reference to him eating a lot like he did in Original Sin. We then cut over to Batista, who's meeting with Sheriff Reed and asking him about Dexter, but not getting much new information outside of telling Reed to let him know if Dexter sells his car, which seems awfully foreshadowing. And then back with Dexter, the restaurant winds up closing for the day, and he freely goes into the kitchen. No one's there, no cameras to see him. Realistically, I think some security probably would have stopped him at this point, but Dexter winds up finding the blood spot on the ceiling tile from Harrison, and he gets rid of it. We then cut to Harrison, who's having nightmares of Dexter, and calls his friend to hang out. When waiting in the car outside, he actually sees Dexter walk out and freaks out, and I kind of knew this was coming at this point since Harrison has been imagining seeing the other guy that he killed, and I figured when he sees Dexter, he wouldn't believe it was him. Dexter then heads over the car that he took from the clinic, only to find out that it's been towed, which was a pretty funny and real joke of parking somewhere like New York City. He then takes a Your Car, which as I said is their version of Uber, and the driver, a guy named Blessing, asks to confirm Dexter's name, clearly being a little bit skittish about passengers after what we saw in the episode's opening kill. And during their drive to the impound, Blessing tells Dexter about this Dark Passenger serial killer who kills rideshare drivers. It's pretty funny how the name of Dexter's internal demons has been stolen by this other guy, and Dexter seems really offended by it. And then back with Harrison, we get a brief scene of him continuing the spiral. He's snorting coke and driving around with his friend, continuing to see stuff that's really traumatizing him. And then cutting back to Dexter, now at the impound, the Your Car driver Blessing has a pretty funny line here where he's talking about this Dark Passenger and says to Dexter, "Can you imagine looking into the eyes of a serial killer?" Dexter then asks about becoming a driver and definitely seems to be becoming friends with Blessing, almost seeming like he's going to be Dexter's sidekick. And very strangely, Blessing winds up offering his personal address and invites Dexter to a party the following day. This was a little strange considering how fearful Blessing initially was, but I guess Dexter, being new to New York City, calmed his nerves as far as being any potential threat. We also have Blessing ask Dexter for his name, but he literally just saw it when picking him up, but maybe a small detail there. And it's pretty obvious here that Dexter wants to become a driver so that he can capture this Dark Passenger killer with his car and then ultimately kill him. We then cut to Uma Thurman, aka Charlie, for the first time in this episode, and she approaches this guy in an ATM. They seem to have some kind of past relationship, He wants extra money, and she tells him no. He offers up some souvenirs to give to, I believe, her boss, Peter Dinklage's character, and she shows that she already took them from his house. She then swings at and presumably kills the guy with this Stranger Things-esque nail bat in a pretty broad daylight parking lot. So that's kind of strange, and at this point, we're pretty evidently managing a few different plot lines that are going to likely converge at some point. We have Harrison wake up in his car after his bender and gets mad thinking about Dexter. He wants to sell the car that he took from Dexter, which we now know will wind up tipping off Batista as far as Dexter being in New York City. Although I do probably think that Batista will meet up with Harrison before he sees Dexter next, but we'll see there. We then cut to the detectives who are watching video footage from the hotel around the time that Harrison committed the murder, and conveniently, there aren't many cameras showing what happened here, but they do see the girl getting roofied at the bar and want to speak with her. We then shift over to Dexter, who winds up going to Blessing's party because he wants to ask one of his friends some details on being attacked by the Dark Passenger. The victim of that attack by the Dark Passenger, who managed to live, points out that Dexter looks very much like this killer, which he definitely does, but it's kind of weird they're not concerned about that at all. The guy winds up showing Dexter a video of the encounter on his phone that he captured, but we can't fully see the killer's face because he's wearing this hoodie with like this infrared technology around it. And after seeing the video, somehow Dexter super quickly texts himself the video from the guy's phone when the group is briefly distracted. I don't think Dexter deleted the text history though, so either way the guy should see that the video got sent, but that scene just seemed pretty unrealistic as far as nobody noticing that he sent that message off. Then we have Blessing, the guy who invited Dexter over to his house, offers to let Dexter stay with him in the space below his house. We also find out here that Dexter wound up swapping out his car for a more subtle choice. I'm not really sure where he had the time to do this, but we'll assume maybe it happened during some passage of time off screen. I know some people have pointed this out, but Dexter having liquid cash available for the car and room rental was a little strange, but I guess we can just assume that he has money saved up from his past. And honestly, these actions aren't really tied to the plot, so I don't totally care about his purchases unless it really gets too over the top. We then get some minor scenes, one being Harry telling Dexter once again to take care of Harrison, and then Dexter getting a new New York ID with his old name again. And here I'm thinking this would also be something that Batista would notice if he was really watching Dexter's actions, but we'll see there. Dexter then does some research on the video that he texted himself of the Dark Passenger. He sees a logo on the killer's backpack, so he looks into that company and finds an employee name that he's most suspicious of due to lack of details. And here we also get Dexter calling the killer the imposter, as opposed to the Dark Passenger title that Dexter has already internally placed a copyright on. Dexter winds up going to the address for the company from the backpack to try to find the guy he suspects the old-fashioned way, since he wasn't able to gather more details about the guy online. We then cut to Harrison in the hotel lobby, and here the police want to speak with him. This seems like one of those fake outs of Harrison getting in trouble, since we're still pretty early on in the show, but we'll see what they wind up asking him about. And then back with Dexter on his stakeout, he finally finds someone leave the company building that looks pretty suspicious, and it turns out that he's right. It is the Dark Passenger. Dexter winds up following him and actually stepping in to protect a your car driver. He winds up staring face to face with the Dark Passenger so they can clearly see each other here. The Dark Passenger winds up taking off and heading down and getting on a subway, but due to Dexter still recovering from his injuries, he's not able to catch up with him. That pretty much closes out this episode. And it's interesting here though, how much of a tonal shift we get with how Dexter is being portrayed by the writers. Here, he's definitely being pitched as a hero in comparison to his portrayal in New Blood. Here, he steps in to help the your car driver and aligns to what Harrison initially thought of Dexter was saving more innocent lives by taking out the guilty ones. But with New Blood, Dexter was more so pitched as being a killer, and it didn't really matter how much the audience liked him or what good he did, he needed to pay for his crimes. And the pivot in Angela's character from last season to now perfectly depicts this, with her note in the previous episode saying that she changed her mind and that they're even. One thing I did think about after these first two episodes, when Dexter initially hears that somebody was cut up into 9 pieces, he immediately knows that it's Harrison, and if so, this kind of implies that this kill method was at least somewhat rare. So with that in mind, wouldn't somebody connect Harrison's kill with the Bay Harbor Butcher? Or do we assume that Dexter's kills in the original series happened long ago enough that no one will really make that connection? But you think with the Bay Harbor Butcher being national news, and that someone like this super detective being on the case would put those pieces together, maybe someone will eventually, who knows. Overall though, I really enjoyed this episode. I probably liked it slightly less than episode 1, due to a few minor issues like Dexter or Harrison not being caught by cameras, but it's still working for me. And for a rating here, I'm torn between either doing a neutral or positive rating. For now, I'll go with a neutral rating, but just know that it's a very high neutral. But what do you think? Did this episode work for you? What parts did you like or dislike? Share your thoughts on all things Dexter Resurrection in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to talk to you again soon.